I'm playing Malcolm tomorrow.
I'm proud of you. Welcome back to Your
Or Sunday.
List Sucks.
Sorry.
Playing somebody on another day. Not a big deal. This is pre-recorded because I wanted Tim Brzakala on this list, so that's why. And he works Wednesdays, so we're going to pre-record this a little bit in the back. But today is Marvel movies. We did top 10 best Marvel movies. I've brought the family, Brzakalas and Parkers together. Of course, they are my faction mates over in Multiplex. I chose all three of these because I enjoy all three of these people, but then I got to thinking that maybe I should have broke them apart because they are too damn similar. But you'll find that out tonight. First one, Tim, the Hulk Brzakala. How are you doing today?
I am doing lovely, Cody. I'm excited to talk about these Marvel films that maybe don't get the spotlight as much because everyone's like, Avengers Endgame. So it's very exciting to talk about these movies that
Didn't you see it like 10 times?
I
have seen it 7 times.
Okay. And next, Robert, the Hobbit Parker. How are you doing today? You were known as a Marvel slut, so I had to include
self-proclaimed. That's not that name was given to me. I chose it. I'm a Marvel whore, and I am ready to talk about some Marvel films.
Fantastic. And Maggie Brzakala.
The macaw.
Maggie, how are you feeling? How do you feel about Marvel movies and being on a show that I get to be mean to people?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about things that aren't MCU. And I'm sorry that I wore this shirt, my other Marvel shirt I wore yesterday before knowing that we were filming this today that just says Marvel on it, but that's okay.
That's fair.
It would have been weird if we were matching anyways, so that's good.
Yeah. So basically how the show works is each person gives their personal top 10 list. This is about them, not about me, but basically I make the show about me because I hate their choices and what they stand for. So what is going to... basically, they're going to start off. Tim's going to give it the first bottom three. If they have it on their list, each person will speak up and say, hey, I have this on my list. Let's talk about it later. And I will give my commentary. And the rest of the team also as they go. So, Tim, give us your 10, 9, and 8.
All right. So my 10 and 9 are pretty interchangeable. To be completely honest, when I re-looked at it after I sent it to you, I kind of wanted to take one of them away to put something else, but I gave you the list this way, so my 10 and 9 are either way, but I put 10 is Kick-Ass. It could be 9, it could be 10, but I wanted it on the list in some capacity because I do think.
So if I have that higher than the bottom 3, do we like kick it for later? If it's in my bottom 3, do we talk about it now?
If it's in your bottom 3, we can just discuss it now. But we can wait till the very end if it's higher.
All right, it's in my bottom 3.
Okay, so Maggie doesn't.
So yeah, so for me, it's a movie that when I saw it in the theater, I didn't know what it was. I just knew that it was a superhero movie because I saw the posters and I didn't even really see the trailers, so I knew it was going to be rated R, and so I'm like, oh, it's going to be violent, but I didn't realize that there was going to be the humor involved and like the crazy ridiculous violence, and it's always kind of stuck with me for that. I think Nicolas Cage is really great in the movie. Aaron Taylor Johnson is great in the movie. Even McLovin, whose name I can't think of right now. Yeah, sure, whatever. So I thought he was really good, and I think the reason I put it so low on the list is because Kick-Ass 2 kind of takes away a little bit from it, but it's still a really, really fun movie. Chloe Grace Moretz, I forgot to mention her too. They're all really, really good in the movie. The movie's really fun, and Matthew Vaughn does a really good job at creating a world where, for me as a kid, I always wanted to buy a superhero suit and become Spider-Man, and realistically that couldn't happen, but then a movie physically did that, where this kid just wanted to become a superhero and more or less did it. Even though he failed a lot, he did it, and I like that. And I also like that it's they don't hold any punches either. There's the scene where they're all getting tortured, where him and Big Daddy are getting tortured, and it's brutal. It's dark, so they really don't hold any punches with the movie. That's why I like it.
Okay, Robert, you have it also on your list. You can tell me the spot and then why it is on your list. Just some little blurbs.
It's actually my number 8. I have it a little bit higher, yeah. So this is actually the second rated R movie I ever saw. Was Kick-Ass. The first was Passion of the Christ.
And also with you.
Yeah, but no, this movie's great. I think people really forget like how entertaining this movie is to watch. Like when you think of like awesome superhero movies, awesome Marvel movies, it's not the first one that comes to mind, but it's definitely one that I really enjoy watching. The two that are below it for me, like age has taken more effect on them than has on Kick-Ass. And yeah, Nick Cage is fantastic. It is brutal. The dynamic between Aaron Taylor Johnson and Lindsay Fonseca is really, really great.
Yeah.
It's off really, really well. The script is really good. The scene where Hit Girl is like chopping off people's arms and legs to this like upbeat song is just really comedic. It's a really fun movie to watch.
Awesome. Yeah. I don't ever have a problem with somebody's 10 normally because that's just where it ranks. I think 8 might be a little high for Kick-Ass, but you're a child, so I don't expect much from you, Robert. No, I'm just kidding. You're next. Tim, give us your 10 and 8 with a quick little thing about those two.
All right. So my number 9 is actually a movie that like I think I probably should have taken off the list. I regret putting it on. And we'll get to that because I know Maggie has it higher. And that's Kingsman: The Secret Service. I regret putting it, but what?
We'll talk about it later. It's higher.
Yeah, he has it higher too, I think. Okay. So then my number 8, again, this list was hard. Probably criminally low, but I have X2 X-Men United at number 8.
Okay.
My number 9.
So
okay.
Just quick little blurbs why you have that.
Okay, so I have this number 8. There are just movies I like more and have more nostalgia from like the early Marvel canon, but I think this was the first this was definitely the first X-Men movie that like really got it right. But other than like this came out in 2003 right after Spider-Man 2002. I think this is like the like perfect superhero movie where like for the time where like it's aged very well. I think this was the first and only time until Logan that we saw like a really great Wolverine, like Wolverine being Wolverine. We didn't really get that from the comic books in the first one. So I just think that this is like the perfect X-Men movie that's not like crazy bonanza stuff that you have to like see every other movie. Like Days of Future Past is great, but you need to like have the knowledge of all the other movies to enjoy that movie, whereas X2 is just like anybody could be dropped into that and enjoy it and love it. So that's why I had it lower than some other stuff, but I really, really love it, and it holds up unlike Spider-Man 2 Spider-Man rather, that's pretty campy.
Yeah, so those are your top. I think Robert has X2 as well, but we can touch on that right when you go into because you've already lost one of yours because of it. So go ahead and give us your 10 and 9 and 8.
My 10 and 9 are really interchangeable. My number 10 is actually Dolph Lundgren's Punisher. I think that this movie. No,
you're fucking lying.
Yeah, no, my number 10 is Spider-Man 2002, Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man. I
have it higher.
Oh shit! Okay. My number 9 then is X-Men 2 X-Men United or X2 X-Men United. This movie is really good, like Tim said. This is, as big fan of Ian McKellen, this is the one of his round in the original trilogy where he's not really the main villain. You sort of get Stryker as the main villain. I think the stuff that Stryker is doing with his son is really cool to watch. Brian Cox is really good. Nightcrawler is really good. So the first X-Men is very, very campy and aged very, very poorly. But this one really expands it. It's a little bit long, which is why it's a little bit lower on my list. There's just other movies that I'd rather watch than X2. But X2 is still really good watch, still a really good movie. Gene's sacrifice at the end is done really, really well. Yeah, and then my number 8 is Kick-Ass, which we already talked about. Boom.
Yeah, X2 being that low, I think if it wasn't for the original, the new trilogy that came out, I would have a bigger problem with it being as low as it was because for the longest time it ranked so high. But I'm pretty sure we'll talk about those later. But yeah, X2 is not bad. We'll talk about Spider-Man later. And yeah, I've already talked about Kick-Ass. So Maggie, somebody that's going to be a little different than the bottom 3 than the same people that just talked. Tell us what made your list and why.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna preface my list with the fact that, like, so Robert obviously didn't see these movies, most of them really in theaters either. We just, like, didn't see superhero movies really in theaters. We saw a lot of, like, animated movies and Percy Jackson and whatever. Anyway, so, like, when I watched these movies for the first time, it was when Tim showed them to me. So some of them have stuck and some of them haven't. And I think a lot of it does have to do with the age of the movie. I'm a terrible person, and if a movie is old, it usually takes a lot for it to stick with me. And like the first X-Men and X2 are really good, but I honestly couldn't tell you what the plot is because I don't remember them at all. I just remember liking them when I watched them. So my number 10 is The Amazing Spider-Man. And the reason that is number 10 is because it's not very good, but I really enjoy watching it. We recently rewatched it, and Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are just the cutest, and I die every time that they talk to each other. And Andrew Garfield is just a great Spider-Man. He's so good at quipping, and I can't remember the villain in that movie. Oh, the Lizard. He's very good as the villain. That whole, like, I feel like the story's pretty contained. Compared to obviously Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I really liked that it was pretty tight in terms of plot, and yeah, that is why it's my number 10.
And
okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say honestly, I'm honestly with Maggie. Like, I love that movie. Like, and if I could redo it, I'd probably take Kingsman off and put that movie on, mainly because I was so I know. I was so burned by Spider-Man 3. Like, that's my number one hated Marvel movie. So the fact that, like, I really liked Andrew Garfield. I liked how they kind of took things from the Ultimate Spider-Man storyline from the comics, which is my favorite run of Spider-Man. And so I really enjoyed what they did with that movie. So I still think that Kingsman is probably the better main movie, but I do love Amazing Spider-Man. So
I don't have an issue with it being 10. Again, it's your 10. I think you probably missed some other ones that could have been. Like, I think X2 is probably better than this one. But again, didn't stick with you. Didn't see it. Like me, I saw it when I was really young, and that I'm an X-Men fan. The only problem with Amazing Spider-Man that I have is the Amazing Spider-Man 2 exists in this world, and I can't complete it or watch it or even attempt to get through the first hour of that movie. It is a train wreck. I hate Amazing Spider-Man 2 with a passion.
You've never seen the whole thing?
Retweet.
No, I've seen it. I've seen it. I mean, on rewatches. It just life is valuable, and you should not have to do that to yourself.
Yeah,
but Amazing Spider-Man 2, I think, has a great premise where it was going. I think Garfield and Emma Stone they screwed that completely thing up because they had the top two actors that they could have grabbed at the time. They put them in a movie and apparently did not know what to do. Go ahead, Rob, real quick.
Yeah, just real quick. Amazing Spider-Man, I think that movie's fine. I don't like it. I think it's fine. I think the villain is awful. But the villain is awful. But the relationship between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone is really good. So if you're gonna have it on your list, I'm glad it's as low as 10. Anything higher, and I would not be happy.
Okay.
I will also say that as someone who, like, is a nerd for, like, picture perfect quality when it comes to, like, visual, like, how I watch my movies, like I have the 4K HDR TV and stuff. The Amazing Spider-Man is the best looking live action Spider-Man movie. The cinematography and the special effects and the just the overall, like, camera work in that movie. They shot it. I know this is really nerdy, but they shot it on a red camera, which is like Tits McGee, and so it's really, it looks really good on 4K.
There's the monetization of this video.
All right.
All
right. He is getting all worked up over cameras. We're gonna move on. Yeah. Maggie, what? I think your 9 has to be talked about later. Yeah. So what is your 8?
Spider-Man is higher for you. Yeah. So Spider-Man was my number 9, the 2002. So number 8 is Big Hero 6, which again shows what I said earlier. So I just think this movie is really cute, and I always forget that it's like a superhero movie and that, like, Marvel did it. But I remember watching this movie in the theater, and it was just a really good time. The characters are really cute, and it, like, does that Disney thing where they, like, you know, throw those, like, deaths at you and all the very sad children, and then you have to learn and grow. And Baymax is super cute, and I, like, remember we took our little cousins to see this movie, and they really enjoyed it, and, like, watching them enjoy it is definitely part of that. But I just think overall it's a really cute movie, and I'm a sucker for Disney animation, and yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I have no gripes. I think it should have been 10 on your list probably. This is one that I would think is like takes Marvel, doesn't really realize what it is, and puts on the list. I think it did a really good job. I think it's a lot of fun. I think the side characters in this movie suck, to be honest. I think that's the one that always takes me out. But I think
so good though.
But I think the relationship.
Isn't TJ Miller the guy with the suit? He's so
Fred.
One bright spot does not fix the entire bunch of those people that one can't pronounce his name correctly. Really drives me nuts in that movie. But overall, great movie. I think the villain's actually pretty good in it. I think it's a little bit underrated for what Disney has put out. But
it's my number 11.
Oh, okay, fair enough. All right, so we're going to move on now to your 7 through 4. Basically, say it, give a little blurb about why you want it. Again, don't go into lengthy discussion because we'll save that lengthy pretty much for yeah. It's all right, Tim. I already know who you are, so you'll chat it up. So you're good. But 7, give us your 7 and why. And if somebody else had it on their list and we already waited, tell them. But then if you had it, talk about it. Okay.
All right. So my number 7 is Spider-Man 2002. Which was low for both of you, right?
Yeah,
okay, so I know I literally just said that my 8 was better than like the 2002 Spider-Man and that it holds up better. But this was the movie that made me like fall in love with movies, and I will never forget that. It's this and Monsters Inc. Like Monsters Inc. holds up for me, but Spider-Man is it to me. It's what made me like just fall in love with movies, fall in love going to the theater with my dad. It made me fall in love with Spider-Man himself, Peter Parker as a character, someone that I like as a young kid could relate to. It was just, I just loved the movie all the way around. I fully understand how cheesy and like Willem Dafoe is like so fucking crazy in this movie. But I love it nonetheless. It's not my favorite Spider-Man movie, but it's definitely the one that I probably have seen the most because of all that nostalgia. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that it probably should be higher for me now that I'm looking at it. I probably should have switched that in Big Hero 6 because for me, Spider-Man was like also the first superhero movie that I ever remember seeing, and we watched it all the time.
Yeah, Maggie and I didn't really have variety in our movie watching. We watched this movie probably like a dozen times a day, and that's not an exaggeration. We watched this movie a lot.
But then the thing for me, the reason that it is so low is because I had great memories of it, and I hadn't seen it since probably high school. And then we rewatched it like a couple months ago, and it was oof. Not age well at all, and I was so sad, but like I still, and it's not just because it does have a good plot and the Uncle Ben stuff is really good, and Tobey Maguire is Tobey Maguire, but it's still enjoyable as a Spider-Man movie, and it is what sparked that in me, I would say, but it has not aged well at all.
And Robert, touch on it for you.
Yeah, very, very briefly. The reason I have this slightly above Big Hero 6, I think Big Hero 6 is a better movie, but this movie is slightly higher just because of that nostalgia factor. The first superhero movie I ever remember seeing it so many times. Willem Dafoe is batshit insane, and I love it. Just like when he blows up and murders the board, when he's like pretending to be a crying baby, like there's just so many great moments in this movie. And it is campy, it is cheesy, but the Uncle Ben stuff is really good. And there's a lot of good still in this movie, and that's why it still has to be on my list, because it is what made me love superhero movies.
Yeah, the first 2 Raimi movies I absolutely love. They're cheesy. I think 2 erases a lot of that cheese factor. It's got it, of course, but it's also got a lot of heart in that movie. But 1 is just insane. I will always remember Willem Dafoe popping out of that little tank and like doing his like crouch on the pane of the ground. And it's just like it's insane and like Parker, Jameson, you're useless. Like all those lines from him, it's just like fantastic for me. Regardless what you feel, I think Willem Dafoe is the best Green Goblin that we could have gotten. He fits that character perfectly. But
When he's
Nostalgia.
Spider-Man on the roof, oh my god.
Nostalgia has definitely got you guys on this one because it's just like it's pretty rough. Rewatch. Me and Robert did a watch along to this not too long ago, and it's a little rough, but I still enjoy it. So go through your next one, Tim.
Yes, I would love to. Okay, so my next movie after Spider-Man, so my number 6, I feel like it's going to be a lot lower than you two, if you have it, is X-Men Days of Future Past.
That's my number 5.
It's my number 5 as well.
Okay, so maybe not. Okay, so like I said before, I think that X2 is the better, like, if you've never seen an X-Men movie, you can just drop in and enjoy it. But X-Men Days of Future Past, at the time, had built upon everything the franchise had built to. So it had built upon the original 3 movies, and First Class, and brought you these great, all of this great stuff. So you've got Hugh Jackman, and then you've got Patrick Stewart and James McAvoy. You've got the incredibly good Michael Fassbender as Magneto, going along with Ian McKellen, and then you've got Nicholas Hoult. And why it ranks a little lower for me is I think Jennifer Lawrence this is where she started to check out, and she was just like, I'm in the Hunger Games and I just won an Oscar, so fuck you. But I still love the movie. I do think that the third act to me isn't great. I don't love the whole baseball field. It's the president of the United States, like that whole thing. Like, I get why it's there, and I'm not saying that I needed some sort of big battle with the Sentinels or anything. But yeah, it just, the ending's a little underwhelming to me. I still love the movie, and actually the Rogue cut is pretty fucking good too. If you haven't seen it, it adds about 20-25 minutes to the movie. That's really good, and it adds Rogue into the film. So yeah, I love this movie. It also erased X-Men Origins Wolverine, so that's cool. So yeah, I love it.
You guys had it both at 5, so you can talk about it. Why do you think it's better than where Tim had it, and why do you like it? Why do you like it more?
This is the first X-Men movie I saw in theaters. I had seen the original trilogy. Yes, I did. I saw it the spring of my sophomore year of high school. Yes, I did. I went with Danny and Colin and Zach. The 4 of us saw this movie in theaters.
Okay.
You don't know my life.
I saw it at midnight the day it came out.
I saw this at the end of my sophomore year of high school. The opening scene of this movie is spectacular, where Storm and Bishop and Blink, and they're all fighting the Sentinels as the Sentinels attack. Excellent scene. The scene that really gets me, my 2 favorite scenes in the movie are when James McAvoy is talking to Patrick Stewart. That interaction, incredible, because McAvoy and Fassbender are both just fucking incredible in this movie. And then the other scene is McAvoy when he's talking to Wolverine about taking his drugs again. And he's like, I don't want your future. I don't want this. I don't want to read your mind. I don't want to know. I don't care. I don't want to feel your pain anymore. And that scene is heartbreaking.
Well, because you've never seen an Xavier like that. Up to that point, you've only seen him as this cocky asshole.
Yeah, you've never seen him as broken.
Or as this wise professor in the original trilogy. So you've never seen him as a broken man, and it was a cool thing, yeah.
And then the Fassbender on the plane naming off the mutants that died. He's like Angel and Banshee and all these one at a time. You let them all die, Charles. This is your fault. This movie's fantastic. It's not my favorite X-Men movie, but it's very, very, very good.
Yeah, I would agree with everything they've said already. If I'm comparing this to X2, like I said, X2 really didn't stick with me. This movie stuck with me. This and First Class both really stuck with me the first time that I saw them. I don't know if it's McAvoy and Fassbender. It honestly might be, because I just am more attached to them as actors, I guess. And it might just be because they're younger. I have no idea. But I still love Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, so who knows? Anyway, I think the movie's really, really good. The first time I saw it, I was a little confused because Tim had just thrown me into this X-Men universe, and I was like, what is happening? And I feel like that is the weakness of the film, is that you have to have your shit together to understand what is happening and to get all the stuff. But that's really no different than Endgame or Infinity War. But for me at the time, it was a little much. But then when we rewatched it before Logan or Deadpool, I can't remember which one, it's just so good. It's so good, and I love it. And I don't have a qualm with the third act the way that Tim does. I think the third act is amazing, and I've never been more stressed watching Michael Fassbender change sides again. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? And it just stressed me out so much, and that is why I like it.
Yeah, so I agree. I agree with you guys. It should have made the list. A few of you are about to feel a lot of wrath from me later, but this movie deserves to be a little bit higher on some of your guys' list, especially over some other ones. But we'll talk about that in a moment. Days of Future Past is brilliant. I absolutely love this movie. I saw it theater opening night too. I won't name all the friends I saw it with, but I saw it with them. But I think it's brilliant. I am an X-Men fan through and through. They are my favorite superhero. I will actually say I kind of like most X-Men movies a little bit better than like the Avengers. I like the Avengers for what they set up, but X-Men have always, from the animated series, so Days of Future Past, they were able to pull off this complex storyline of going back, and McAvoy's character when he tells Logan to fuck off, like what you said to me after all those years, like that's just brilliant. That's a brilliant line that they call back, and I think the only people that have the problem is like sending Wolverine back, because I think in the comics it's Kitty Pryde, but again,
they use her. They use her.
It's her power that sends him
I
back.
just think the issue of this movie, and the issues of the trilogy, is Jennifer Lawrence at times. She doesn't want to be there, and it shows on screen most of the time. But I think it should be higher. But we'll talk about that in a second.
Sorry, just had to mention it once. Quicksilver scene, time in a bottle.
That was insane. So what's your next one? I'm feeling like the next one we're gonna have to hold off, but
yeah, probably. I honestly forgot about it at first when I don't know why, and then all of a sudden, right before I sent my list to Cody, I went, "Oh shit!" And that's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I have it.
We're talking about that way later, my friend.
Yeah. Okay, so then my number 4 is so X-Men First Class.
Same.
My 4.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So
we're all the same.
So as I was saying, Future Past, you get all of these things together. First Class did such a good job of not just being like, how did Magneto and Professor X meet? It went so deep into those characters. Like, I don't even know what to, like, they're just so fantastic, McAvoy and Fassbender. I think this is the best performance from both of them as these characters in these movies. You really feel their friendship. It's not like in the prequels where, like, Anakin's always like a little bitch to Obi-Wan, but then but they're supposed to be friends and to eventually break up. You feel how close these guys are, but there's always that like tension from Magneto because they do have that butting head, but they're still friends. And like we alluded to with the Wolverine fuck off thing, that scene, absolutely fantastic. I think Kevin Bacon he's
really good,
awesome as the villain.
Yeah,
at the end with the coin is really, really cool. Putting in the missile crisis as kind of the MacGuffin in the movie is really cool. It was the first time that I saw an X-Men movie that I just went, holy shit, this is just firing on all cylinders. They got every character right. Matthew Vaughn, again, just coming in and taking a property that was more or less dead in the water after The Last Stand and Wolverine and just revitalizing it with these great actors and great characters. So out of the newer tier X-Men movies, this is out of like this trilogy of like First Class, Days of Future Past, and Apocalypse. This is my favorite of the three.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah. Whoever wants to talk next about it, okay.
The bar scene is the best scene in the movie, where he's like, my parents were killed by pig farmers and tailors. And he's like, blood or honor, which would you like to shed first? And then he just kills these people. He goes, let's just say I'm Frankenstein's monster. Like that scene in Argentina when there's only one line of English spoken, that entire scene, and Fassbender has you gripping, you're like, oh shit, he just murdered some people, like throws the knife and brings it back. Oh, it's so good. That scene is so good.
Yeah. I mean, I like Tim said, the friendship between Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy really gets me. There's that scene where McAvoy's helping Fassbender like control his powers. He's like moving the satellite or whatever. I just remember watching that scene and being like, but I know how this is gonna end. And it hurts me because I know that they're going to have a falling out, and they just do such a good job they just have great chemistry, and it really helps carry the movie.
They did something with the X-Men with the relaunch of it. It was able to two characters that were so loved from the first ones and find two characters that you can just fall in love with. I've said this before. I think McAvoy is way better than Patrick Stewart as actual Professor.
He has more to work with.
Yeah, I think Logan is like a shining star, but they do not give Professor X the amount of time needed to be the McAvoy's literally the star of most of these movies. I'm different with you guys. I think Kevin Bacon is a little ridiculous in this movie for the most part.
January Jones is the weird part of this movie.
Yeah, I take that back. She is. I said every character is great. She's pretty terrible.
Which one?
Yeah, the Diamond.
Emma Frost.
Yeah.
Jones. Emma Frost.
Yeah, that's just that was. I
She
think
did
that's
really
just
well.
it's one of those bad things. But I had always First Class high. I always had Days of Future Past higher than First Class. But after rewatching it just recently, it has flip flopped. I think First Class is brilliant. I think that score is insane in that movie.
Oh God, the Henry Jackman score.
Yeah. And the Argentina.
Thank you for dropping that.
Yeah, the Argentina scene is insane. So yeah. I have no problems with X-Men on there, but we're about to get into some nastiness. So, Robert, you're next. Give us your
My 7. I'm sure this will be a talk about it later, but my 7 is Deadpool.
Yeah, talk about it later.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, this is the movie that I was talking about before we started, where I'm like, Cody, you're gonna be upset that they have it somehow. My 6 is Kingsman: The Secret Service.
It's my 7.
I had it at 9.
All right, let's talk about it real quick. This movie rocks. This movie, it's just so good. There's one bad anal joke at the end, but the rest of the movie is fantastic. It is like taking this character. Taron Egerton is fantastic. Colin Firth is like the father figure that everybody wants. Mark Strong just fucking spectacular. Like
Mark Strong is so good.
The training sequence where he's like, "That's a bulldog, isn't it?" And she's like, "No, it's not going to get any bigger." Like the training stuff is so good. Michael Caine is amazing. Like when he goes from proper to once he knows he's being poisoned, he's like, "You fucking little prick!" Like just starts freaking out. The whole idea of like a secret spy organization named after the Knights of the Round Table. Mark Hamill is really fun in this movie. All the heads exploding is very Matthew Vaughn, but it's real fun. Samuel Jackson is a little bit hammy.
Yeah,
I think the rest of the movie is really enjoyable. I love this movie. I saw it like 4 times in theaters.
Yeah, I really, really enjoy this movie as well. I love Taron Egerton. He's so good. And I love Colin Firth too. And this is him at like prime Colin Firth, but like not the romance part. And it was just so good. I'd say that Samuel Jackson is a little bit, his whole lisp thing is like, okay.
It's a virus.
Yeah, it's whatever. It is what it is. But I just enjoy you can't think too hard about it, I feel like, with this movie, because then you're just going to find things that you're not going to like. But I think that it's a really just, like, fun movie to watch.
So, here's the thing. I struggled. I put this at 9. I wish I hadn't put it on the list, because and I wish I would have put The Amazing Spider-Man on, because honestly, and I know I'm in the minority in this group. Well, actually, I don't know how Cody feels about Kingsman. I have a feeling this is the movie he doesn't lie. Do you like Kingsman, Cody?
I enjoy Kingsman. I think Kingsman's almost at the perfect spot. If it was any higher, people rave about this movie. I think it's very it did something we don't really see. It took James Bond and kind of made him a badass, and James Bond is, but it's like to that extent, and like the School of Spies, I thought it was very neat. I just don't have the like, oh my gosh, love for it like some people do. So
yeah, and honestly, ever since The Golden Circle came out, which I think is an atrocious movie, and I've seen it twice, and the first time I didn't like it. And granted, it wasn't a great theater experience. Like I had just gotten some news that kind of like
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot
that kind of like bummed me out pretty hard. So I wasn't in the right headspace when I saw it the first time, but when it came out on Blu-ray, I saw it again, and I really didn't like it. And it's honestly detracted from the first one for me. And that
silly. I think that's stupid.
but it's not like I've gone back to the first one, and there's still parts of it that I love, like the whole ending of the whole finale from when Mark Strong and Eggsy or whatever, they get there and he goes to like stop Valentine or whatever. That whole like fight sequence with him and Sofia Boutella is amazing. It just hasn't hit as much as it did for me when it was in theaters. So I saw it in theaters like 2 or 3 times and loved it. It came out on Blu-ray, loved it. Just as the years have gone on, there's just so many more movies I would rather watch. And by the end of the movie, honestly, I'm a little exhausted because it's long. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes long. I don't think it needs to be that long. It's still a good movie. I enjoy it way more than the second one. But when I'm thinking about it, I would much rather watch like the Spider-Man movie than Kingsman, and that's just me. And I
think you're just a bitch for Spider-Man.
That's true. I'm in the minority that you put more Spider-Man movies on your list than I did. So I'm in the minority there, but I still love the movie. I think it's a good movie. I just don't think it's Matthew Vaughn's best movie.
No.
I have 4 Matthew Vaughn movies. Megan doesn't have Kick-Ass.
Oh my gosh. Maggie needs a soundbite like that. So you're a bitch for Spider-Man.
Oh yeah.
All right, fair enough.
The church
Okay.
scene also is like the best action scene in any of these movies.
What is?
The church scene with Freebird playing? Oh my god.
Yeah, that scene is crazy.
So good.
Okay. So we've talked about that, and I think some of you have been skipped. So I think you're all the way up to.
Yeah, so 7 was Deadpool, 6 was Kingsman, 5 was Future Past, 4 was First Class. So I'm done. Okay.
All right, Maggie, do you have?
And I only have one other movie that hasn't been said yet, but it probably will be higher for you. So I have Spider-Man 2 at 6.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh! Yeah, that'll need to wait.
Okay. All right. So we are going to get to the top 3. Whew. Again, you guys are quite similar. With it, looking at your list, I don't have huge issues with it. Normally, I'm ripping people apart by this time. I get yours. It's coming.
Well, we are Boatman and Ryan Permison.
Yeah.
So.
Believe me, it's coming, but we're not there yet. I need number 3 mentioned, and if you have it 2 to 1, you say we're going to talk about it in a second. Okay. So, Tim, what is your number 3?
So my 3 was Deadpool, which was Robert's whatever.
It's my 2, so
my
we'll
7.
In a second.
Fucking yikes. Okay. Let's go to Robert. What is your number 3?
My 3 is Spider-Man 2.
That's my 2.
Okay. Let's go to number 3 for Maggie.
I have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse at 3.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
Okay.
That was my 5.
So now we can officially go to Tim. We can talk about Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2. Basically, how I want this kind of work is you two, Robert and Tim, talk about why it ranks so high for you and what you love about this film, and Maggie kind of tell why it didn't make as high for you on this list.
All right. Well, it's my number 2. And honestly, it was almost my number 1 because Spider-Man 2, I said before, like the first 02 one was a movie that I have a lot of nostalgia for. It's a movie that made me fall in love with movies. And this is the movie that just reinforced all of those feelings. Seeing Spider-Man 2 in the theater and the prospect of like this hero that I thought was so cool in the first one, now going to college and struggling, and he's struggling to pay his rent, and he is even struggling to deliver pizzas because has this burden of needing to please Mary Jane and Aunt May and Harry, but at the same time he has this need to be Spider-Man, and he can't help himself from being Spider-Man. And it's just such a relatable story. I absolutely love it. Alfred Molina as Doc Ock is so good, and I'm so happy that this movie didn't come down to, you know, like the same thing as the first one where Doc Ock and Peter are just fighting each other to the death or whatever. No, in the end, Doc Ock is kind of the one who saves the day. And I think that's awesome that the villain is the one who realizes, like, no, I've done something stupid. I need to fix the problem. And he's the one who ends up more or less saving Peter and MJ. It's fantastic. The score in this movie by Danny Elfman is great. The action's great. This is kind of where you start to get a little too much of the Mary Jane is a whiny, crazy person, but I forgive it because the rest of the movie is so fantastic. And this is also where you start to see that Sam Raimi, like Evil Dead, like we're going to up the ante and make it really crazy and dumb. But it's so good. I don't know a single person that watches this movie and doesn't at least say that it's good. But to me, the nostalgia, the action, the villain, all of the characters just make this the best Spider-Man movie to me. I like this movie more than Homecoming. I like this movie more than Spider-Verse. I love this movie. So
yeah, that's fair. Robert?
Yeah, similar points to Tim. This movie is really good. There are holes you can poke, but I forgive them all. Maggie and I didn't see this one as much as the first Spider-Man, but we still saw it a hell of a lot of times. This is still, I love what Tim said about even like as Dr. Otto Octavius before he puts the arms on, when he's just meeting Peter for lunch, like that's a really good scene. And we see him just go off the walls because his wife dies because of him. And then he accepts responsibility later in the movie. For everybody who says that Tobey Maguire isn't a good quippy Spider-Man, rewatch this movie because he is. In the bank heist scene, he's so quippy. At the end, when he takes his mask off and he's holding the bar up, he's like, this is getting really heavy. Mary Jane, can you move? Like, he is a quippy in this movie. The train sequence, he's quippy. And, like, this movie is really, really great. It is not my favorite Spider-Man movie. It was until, like, 2 weeks ago. But this movie's still really, really good. The nostalgia is there. I think that the villain is incredible. The MJ stuff is fine. And, yeah, it's just really enjoyable. The character is fun to explore. Like, you don't just see the character of Spider-Man going and saving people. You see him as a human and how much it takes a toll on Peter. So Maggie, why do you hate it?
Well, no, one quick thing before Maggie talks about why it's lower for her. I will just rebuttal for 1 second about Spider-Man being quippy. Is to me, Tom Holland's the best Spider-Man. The difference is that Tom Holland, you can tell, is doing a lot of ad-libbing his own stuff and playing with it in the same way that Andrew Garfield was. And you can tell that Tobey Maguire's reciting lines of quips that were written for him. Okay. And I think that's the difference. It's not that Spider-Man in this movie is not quippy, because he is, and he is in all three of the Raimi movies. It's just Tobey Maguire's not ad-libbing these lines. He's reading them off a page, and you can tell, versus Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield. But don't get me wrong, that does not mean that I don't love the movie. I just had to, throw that in.
Yeah. So for me, the reason that it's lower is not because I don't like the movie. It's just that I like these other movies more, is really just what it comes down to. Like, when I was making this list, I was like, really, except for like my number 1, 2 through like 6 could really be in any order, because I really do enjoy all of them. The thing with Spider-Man 2 is Doc Ock is amazing. He's probably my favorite part of the movie. And I know you said you liked the whole thing with Peter struggling, and I do like it too. Tobey Maguire irritates me, and I didn't realize it until we rewatched it recently. And I was just like, you know what? He's kind of like terrible, and I don't really like watching him doing this. And that might have been his interaction with Mary Jane too, because I realized that she is like a whiny bitch. And I think part of it is that we watched it so many times as a kid, and then watching it again as an adult with like a mature film sense, I was like, wait, I feel like I was fooled. Yeah. And I don't like that feeling. And I think that's why it is where it is for me. Where like Days of Future Past, First Class, and Spider-Verse are like, I like them a lot more, I guess, because I feel like now as an adult I can watch them and be like, yeah, those are really good movies. But like, I still think the movie is really good.
Yeah. So I'll touch on it real quick. That's like where I'm gonna see like Spider-Man 2 for me is how I think people, and this may get people to lose their shit. But this is how I kind of see like the original trilogy for Star Wars for people. If you didn't grow up on Star Wars, like if it wasn't but it was just shown to you when you're a teenager after what we have in life, it's not going to resonate with you the way that the film. Because even if you're not like a huge film person, New Hope is like slow for people. It's slow. It doesn't have a lot. It doesn't have the flashy effects that we have nowadays. And I think that's when you look back on Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 ranks so high for me is because of the age I saw it at. Like if I saw it at recently, it's nowhere near probably my top 20. But looking back on the acting performances plus the nostalgia, it's where it is. And I think it's a perfect placement. Again, I don't, as Maggie kind of talked about, you saw when you were little, but again, it didn't probably resonate with you as much at that point. So I have no problem with it being a little lower. I just think the acting performance is probably one of the best in superhero. I think Tobey Maguire is pretty meh most of the time in these movies, but again, I love the surrounding characters more. So I don't mind it being as high for you guys. I think it's a perfect placement. I probably would have put the X-Men. It's interchangeable almost at this time for Days of Future Past, First Class, and Spider-Man 2, but nostalgia sometimes outweighs all that. So I think it is time for Robert to say your number 2.
Yep. My number 2 is, I'm actually pretty sure it's both of your number 1s. It's Logan.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second. So, all right. I will just talk about this now. I will talk about this now. I normally let you guys discuss, but two of you are being put on trial for a fucking abomination. Not that it's a bad movie. It is not a bad movie at all. It's a great movie in the sense if you're 8-year-olds. Yes, it does something different. It says cuss words. It's funny. But as a Marvel comic book movie, this is the most cookie cutter, paced together, paint by numbers bullshit that I've seen. And the people that absolutely fawn over it and love it and enjoy it, you'll get your time in a second, sir. But guess what? You have already been convicted and you are already being sentenced. Your list sucks for having this as high as it is. First Class and Days of Future Past outweigh this movie by a fucking mile. There's two things. There's two things on this movie. Again, my problem is I will stand by this. The problem with this movie is, yes, I worked at the theater when this movie came out. Yes, I had to watch the first 45 minutes in the theater to watch from people sneaking into the movie. So I saw the first half of this movie a bunch of times. So I don't find it as funny as everybody. But for a best Marvel movie of all time, for 3 and 2, you two should be ashamed of yourselves. And now you can tell me why, but again, you've already been sentenced. So,
Robert, where did you have this?
Well, you're talking.
7.
Meg?
7, Jesus. I'll be right back.
That's my beautiful wife, Margaret, has to use the bathroom. I will say this. I love the X-Men. I love Deadpool. But if I'm going to sit down and watch a movie, more often than I'm just going to throw in and be like, oh, I just want to turn my brain off and watch something, I would rather sit down and watch a funny comedy that makes me feel good and makes me laugh than a heavier movie. Deadpool kind of outweighs that. Again, I know I just made this argument with Kingsman. I think Deadpool 2 is atrocious. I still love the first one. I feel like there's a lot about Kingsman 1 that leads into Kingsman 2, and they kind of, like, they're connected for me, whereas Deadpool and Deadpool 2 aren't. I think Ryan Reynolds is pitch perfect. I think this is the best romance in any Marvel movie. I think this is the best in any superhero movie. It's the best romance. I love the way the film was marketed. The way the film was, I just think the whole thing as a package is great. And it kind of comes down again to that Spider-Man 2 thing, where obviously it's not the same with the nostalgia, where Spider-Man 2 came out in 2004. This is 2016?
2016, yep.
Yeah, 2016. So, but in the sense that, like, I have such fond memories of going to see this movie over and over again with this one around Valentine's Day. It was a very romantic time for us. So I love this movie all the way around. Sure, Gina Carano is not good in the movie at all. And there are some parts of it that are definitely just like, I'm waiting to get to the next thing, because like most of the stuff with him in the place getting changed or whatever, like I could skip over that stuff, but I just have such a good time. And it's not just the fact that like he's saying fuck and shit over and over again. There's some actual heart to the movie that oh, you shut up. There's some heart to the movie that I definitely get behind. I would understand why in all sincerity, I understand why someone would have this low on a list or not on the list at all. I do get it. But for me, because comedy is wildly subjective, but it hit for me. And so to me, it's much higher. The comedy here hit for me hard. In the second one, it didn't. And that's why it's not on my list, and why it's probably going to be it would be on like a worst list. But this one hit for me so hard. That's why it's high for me. I love it. Maggie.
Yeah, I mean, like Tim said, if I'm going to choose any of these movies to rewatch, I'm choosing Deadpool, because it's just, at this point, it's pretty easy to just sit through and enjoy. And like after the movie came out, we would not stop quoting it. We would not stop saying the jokes to each other. And I think it really does come down to the theater experience that we had. We saw it a bunch of times, and it was Valentine's weekend, and it was a really good time. And I do get the problems with the plot. It is pretty cookie cutter, but you can't tell me that things like Ant-Man aren't cookie cutter, because they are. And so shut up, Cody, you're wrong. It's literally Iron Man, but they're small.
I wasn't arguing. I think that's a cookie cutter plot too. My problem is both of you just ruined your own argument, and I will bring it up on your number one, because what's more rewatchable, and you picked fucking Depression City as your one. But we'll talk about that in a second.
But the way that I make my list, I'm not thinking about how good the movie is. I'm thinking about how I feel when I watch the movie. And when I watch Deadpool, I usually feel pretty good. I might fall asleep, because at this point I've seen it so many fucking times. And it's not the violence, and it's not the swearing. It takes you off guard right away at the beginning. But like going into this movie really not knowing what to expect, because there was a lot of controversy around Deadpool, and then going in and having this amazing experience in like just the opening credits. And I know now they're kind of cliche when you watch it because of what Deadpool has become in the last 2 years. But I don't know. I really enjoyed it the first time that we watched it, and I always will. And Deadpool 2 made me want to kill myself, but it's fine.
Fucking yikes.
See, I had to sit there and sell these 2 tickets over and over, and I had to listen to them quote the movie over and over and over. That's why I hate it.
We talk about it a lot.
Maximum effort.
Yeah, no, I do really like this movie. The opening credits, the action is really good. Does take you off guard, but the shock value very much depletes over time when he's like, this is supposed to be a superhero movie, but he just turned that guy into a fucking kebab. Yeah. Like, there are really memorable lines when he's just prancing around yelling Francis. Like, that's really good. I just think that over time, I've gotten kind of sick of like prune-faced Deadpool walking past like Blind Alan farting and saying, drive by. Like, and like,
you remembered it.
Well, that's the thing. That's why the second one doesn't work. And that's why I'm saying like, you get, I don't buy the get tired of it, because like there are certain jokes that just don't hit. That joke doesn't hit for you, and that's why the second one doesn't work for me, because they do this. It's just the same movie. They just do the same jokes over and over again. But this one's like fresh all the way around.
Right, and I think it really does come down to the fact that like when we saw it, nothing is like better than the first time that you see a movie in the theater and you have no idea what's going to happen. And I feel like that definitely had a huge part, for me at least, with the controversy with Deadpool and the marketing and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's like, it's still really good, and I do still really enjoy watching it. I think the other movies that I had ranked higher, maybe not as rewatchable, but I will go back and like, I like them more. Like Days of Future Past, First Class, Spider-Man 2. Like, I just like those movies more than I like Deadpool.
Yeah. I've kind of said my 2 cents on it. Again, I find it funny. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm not saying it should not a major list. I just think 2 and 3 is a little ridiculous for me. But again, that's why your list sucks. But yeah, there's funny parts. Like, I'm gonna fucking spell it out for you, and the bodies are spelling Francis. Like, that stuff's funny for me. I just feel like over time, I think it's the problem with being in this community. As long as I have at this point,
Yeah.
it's been talked about so long, and people talk about it as like a top 10 like comic book movie, and I think that's insane. Just because overall, when I think of comic book, I think of like does something to stand around the thing, and this is like girls in danger. He has to go save him, and he gets revenge of the bad guy. Do they do a lot of fun along the way? Absolutely. But again, that's just my opinion. I think the X-Men movies are way better than what Deadpool do, and I will stand by Tim. I think Deadpool 2 is a flipping abomination. I hate that movie. All right, so we'll go to Robert actually next, because the other two have the same one as their number one. So we'll share that time. So Robert, explain to me why this is your number one Marvel movie, and explain to me, Tim and Maggie, why you disagree of it being number one.
Yep. So Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is my favorite Marvel movie. People can claim recency bias all they want. I think recency bias is just as valid a claim as nostalgia. I think Spider-Verse is correct, perfect. Like, if you're not having a little side conversation.
Oh, I was just gonna say that recency bias. Our movie came out in 2017, so.
No, yeah, like I don't think recency bias is a valid claim. Why? Like, in most cases, I don't think it's a valid claim. Spider-Verse is a really, really good movie. Like, it is beautifully animated. Every single frame of that movie is a painting. It looks like it's straight off of a comic book. Every character is fleshed out, no matter how much time you get with them. I mean, Doc Ock and Kingpin are just as fleshed out as Spider-Man Noir and Penny Parker and Peter B. Parker. Like, it's incredible. The relationship between Peter B. Parker and Miles is spectacular. The relationship between Gwen and Miles is spectacular. Even just like the opening introduction of Miles' character when he's like saying to himself is so good. Miles, yeah, exactly. His relationship with Aaron, his uncle Aaron, is so good. Mahershala Ali with his sultry tones, fantastic. Like, the voice, the cast of this movie is stacked. I just think that every part of this movie is perfect. The way that they play off of like, oh, let's do this one last time, and they do that like 6 times. That's really, really good. You might be able to hear my dog click clacking in the background.
Hello, how are you?
Let's do a little cameo. But Spider-Verse, it was my number 2 for a long time, and then I rewatched it a couple weeks ago, and I realized just how like in love I am with this movie. It just hits every single beat for me. From the time that like Gwen and Peter are talking at the end and they're like, did you teach him that? I didn't teach him that. You certainly didn't. Like, every line of this movie is perfect. The songs, I'm going to pull a Kaleb Koho here. The way the music is integrated in this movie, whether it's What's Up Danger when he's like flipping off and upside down, like all of this is so good. This movie is perfect, is a great encapsulation of the character Spider-Man. You hear her sneezing now. She's worth. I'll mute in a second so you guys can talk. But Spider-Verse is my number 1 for good reason, and I love it to pieces.
Yeah.
And every single beat, action, comedy, drama, heartfelt, hits perfectly. Every single beat.
Before I turn it over to Tim and Maggie, because I think Tim has got a little bit of a visceral reaction of it being your number 1. And I'll let him talk in a second. My only viewpoint is I will say after rewatches, I think this is the best Spider-Man movie that we have gotten. Just for the simple fact of what it was able to accomplish. Spider-Man is a person that makes everybody feel that they could possibly be a superhero, and he goes through real life struggles. They were able to introduce the multiverse in a very cool way, and those supervillains and the different versions of Parker. This movie on paper should have never worked. It should have been a flippin' train wreck from the get-go. And the way they worked it, And then they were talking about before it was launched that they're creating all these other spin-offs off of it. And I was just like, can you calm down? The people might not like it as much as you think it is, but then it came out and it is. Do I think one already? Little high? Absolutely. But I can't fault you because of what it is. I mean, we did the top 10 2010 animated, it was 3rd overall already, and it just came out on that vote, and that was from 3 people having it at number 3. So it's already showed so many like waves. So I don't know if it should be number 1. I think it should definitely be top 5 for what it is. But Tim, go ahead. Why do you hate Spider-Verse? No, I'm just kidding.
Hey Cody, Maggie, well, is fucking Kaleb Koho here? Oh look, it's Kaleb fucking Koho. Oh, Spider-Verse movie. Oh, fucking Kaleb. You like La La Land too, Kaleb Koho? All right. Yeah. As Cody said, I think top 5, perfect. I think that's why I have it at number 5. I think this movie is everything that Robert said.
It's true.
I 100% wholeheartedly agree with. There are some things that bother me about the movie. I don't like the way that literally just because his dad says that he loves him, he can just automatically like be the best Spider-Man out of all of these people who have been Spider-Man for a really long time. But it's not such a big problem that it makes me not like the movie. I love the movie. The ones that I have above it, maybe it is a recency thing where like this movie just came out and I've only seen it 4 times. So I don't have as much love for it as maybe Robert does here, but that's not to say I don't love the movie. I think the movie's fantastic. I just like these other ones more, whether it's for nostalgia or I just think they're better made movies. I think that this movie is great. It probably is the best made Spider-Man movie we have. I just like Spider-Man 2 more based on the nostalgia. But yeah, Miles is great. Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker is fire. He's so good in the movie. But it is a movie where like the first time I saw it, I went, yeah, it was good. Like I liked it. I liked it a lot. And then we saw it again, and that's when I really started to click with the movie. So it does get better every time I see it. But I'm just me personally, like I'm not ready to say it's the best Marvel movie yet. I would be interested to see where this ranks among any Marvel movie with Robert, because like if this would still be like his number 1 or in his top 5, like
with MCU,
including MCU,
still probably top 5.
Yeah, see that's where I struggle with it. Like I don't know if it would even make my top 10 if we're including the MCU. So
it's top 10 for sure if you include the MCU.
Yeah. So anyway, I really like the movie. I'm not ready to call it like this big masterpiece yet. I'm happy it won the Oscar. I'm happy that it did as well as it did because it is a great movie and I love it. But number 1 is just that's a little high for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I just agree with everything that Tim said. The biggest problem for me is that I feel like those extra 3 people, the Penny, whatever, is it Penny Parker,
yep,
Spider-Ham, and Noir Spider-Man, I feel like they were really rushed and they were shoved in there because they felt like they had to have more characters to make it a multiverse. And well, that's how I feel about it. And I'm gonna say, and that's just I would have liked to spend more time with just Peter, Miles, and Gwen, and I think the movie would have been fine with just the 3 of them. I thought the extra 3 weren't necessary.
Good.
They're good. Nicolas Cage as the Spider Noir.
Drinking eggs and fighting Nazis.
Me on the inside, so I enjoy it.
I want to light a match just to feel it burn down.
Exactly, just to feel
the
something.
wind smells like rain.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just a problem that I have, and then. There's something else. Oh, no, I can't remember what my other problem was. But yeah, I think it is just that, like, I'm just not ready to say that it's the other thing. You guys keep saying it's the best Spider-Man movie, but I don't think, like, this movie would not exist if we don't have the Spider-Man movies that we already have.
Yeah, but like,
I feel like
not as good of a movie. Yes, Spider-Man 2, if Spider-Man 2 and even Homecoming didn't happen, you're right, Spider-Verse would not exist. But that doesn't mean that Spider-Verse can't be a better movie.
No, I know. I'm just saying that you need to give credit where credit is due. And I think that you like to just jump the gun and say that, I don't know. It's just a thing with me where like I don't know. I can't explain it.
You're just not ready to say that it's the best movie ever. And it's fair. Honestly, like I said, it's like a recency thing for me, even though Robert said he doesn't think that's an excuse. I think that's 100% it, is that it is a recency thing. And in the same way that like our number one only came out like a year and a half earlier than Spider-Verse, but I've had time to sit with it. I've had more than 5 months to sit with this movie. So that's why, like,
I also think there's a big difference with your one and his one, because basically you had X amount of years with a character, and the reason he's your number one is maybe because you had to sit on it, but it also told that story the way you wanted to tell it, and you have the build-up. Spider-Verse is on its own just what it is, and it's just hit. And I agree that we wouldn't have Spider-Verse without the movies. I'm just saying as a true Parker story, Peter Parker story, or Miles Morales, or Spider-Man in general, I think it has a lot of heart with it. Again, I wouldn't probably put it at number one already. But again, the more you watch something, if you watched it a ton, I can see why it ranks high.
I've already seen this movie like 6 times.
Also, the Stan Lee cameo, I think, is perfect. Just because it will fit eventually. You know, that's just what Stan Lee created with those characters. And I think it was also a really cool character like Miles Morales. You know, it's just again a character that most people don't see. Most people probably didn't even know about Miles Morales before this, about that run in the comics. So I think it was very cool. Again, your list isn't terrible, but one's maybe a little high. So go ahead, guys. Tim and Maggie, tell us what your number one is and why it ranks the top. And Robert, kind of just say why it missed, you know?
Yeah, it's my number 2. So.
Yeah, just why it misses, you know?
Go ahead.
I thought Robert was going.
You guys have it. You guys have it one.
I'm so sorry. I wasn't paying attention. Fine. Anyway, Logan is really, really good, and it's not really like, it's really, really good just as like a film, like outside outside the superhero genre. It is just like a Western that I actually enjoy for some reason, and it's just really good. It really closes the story, and I think you're right, Cody, that the thing with Logan is that it is like the end of the chapter for that character, and we've had the years of build up to that moment, and I think that definitely has a lot to do with it. But his performance, Hugh Jackman, is amazing, and you can tell that he's just putting everything into this character. Like, he's been playing this character for so long, and he puts everything he has into this last performance. And Patrick Stewart kills it too as Professor X in this movie. He is so good, and their chemistry and their relationship, the way it's progressed, everything that's happened, it's just really touching and heartbreaking at the same time. And then you bring in X-23, and she's really good. This little girl is just, I don't think that was her first movie, I would imagine.
It was.
I think so,
yeah.
But she was really, really good, and the chemistry between her and Hugh Jackman, and then her and Patrick Stewart, and just the three of them together. That scene where they're eating dinner with that family, and they're all just like laughing and having a good time, and then you just know that shit's gonna hit the fan right after that, because right after that Patrick Stewart dies, and it's really touching, and it really just it's a drama, and it pulls your heartstrings. And I really enjoy it. Can't watch the end without shedding a tear. And yeah, I just think that it's a really good movie overall.
Yeah, I will echo a lot of those sentiments. I think that I think that every character in this movie is pitch perfect. James Mangold was very clear from the get-go that he wanted to make a Wolverine movie that would service the fans, and I think he did that so well, not just only servicing the fans of Wolverine, but like Maggie said, making just a film, not necessarily a superhero film. It is the most like non-superhero movie out of any superhero movie in the Marvel canon. in my opinion. And I think that I was excited for the movie going into it, thinking, oh, we're going to get the R-rated Wolverine that I've always wanted. He's going to stab people in the face. And the opening scene where he is killing all those people that are like beating the shit out of him and trying to steal the limo or whatever, and he's stabbing the shit out of them. And I remember sitting in the theater thinking, finally, this is it. But the movie's so much more than that. Whereas I think, like we talked about with Deadpool, Deadpool does rely a lot on the swearing and the violence. Mm-hmm. This movie has those things, but that's not what builds the movie. That's not what the movie is built upon. The movie's built upon a story and a relationship between Logan and Wolverine, and Professor X, very similar to the way that we were just talking about with Spider-Verse. Mm-hmm. You have Miles and Peter. This movie's all Wolverine and Logan, but then, God damn it, Logan and Professor X, but then you also get that added bonus of X-23, and even Stephen Merchant coming in as Caliban is really good, and then Boyd Holbrook as the villain.
He's probably the weakest part.
I honestly
think Grant is worse than he is.
I think he's really, really good. I just love the movie so much all the way around. It's the best movie in the X-Men universe. I think X-Men First Class is the best X-Men movie. But as far as this whole Fox Marvel X-Men thing, Logan is firing on all cylinders. It pulls at the heartstrings. It's got great action sequences. It's the best performance from Hugh Jackman
ever
or Patrick Stewart. This movie is fucking perfect. I love it.
Robert, I will give my 2 cents in a second.
I mean, yeah, this movie is like still incredible. This movie is fantastic. Tim's absolutely right. It's the best movie in the X-Men universe. The relationship between Logan and Professor X is brilliant. Patrick Stewart gives a knockout performance. That night when they spend in the Munson household, and the next morning he wakes up and sees Logan's face, and he says, "This was by far the best sleep I've ever had, but I don't deserve it." And he starts weeping because he realized what he's done. Like, they never explicitly say it, but they imply that he killed every other X-Men. Every other he killed. And he's like, I don't deserve this happiness, this happy ending. And then he gets stabbed in the heart by who he thinks is Logan. Oh my God. And then when Wolverine is burying him in the rain and digging the grave for him, and Laura just takes his hand. Oh my God, no cry. It is a tearjerker. This movie's great. And it also has that violence. It has that opening scene of the limo. It has that ending scene where Wolverine takes the serum and just goes ape shit in the woods. Like, it has
even action with X-23 is crazy.
Yeah. I think the weakest part of the movie is all of Laura's friends once they get to Eden. I think
they're like not important though.
Exactly. But then why put him in it? Why not have Lauren? Okay, we're not talking about why not. Anyways, I think that's the biggest part of that movie. But that's still a very small part. It's 15 minutes. Yeah, the movie is fantastic. You all hit every single point. It is a drama. It is a Western. The scene where Professor X has a panic attack in the casino, in the hotel, and Wolverine stabbing his claws to walk through, and then you see the guy slowly turns and looks, and Wolverine stabs him in the side of the head. Spectacular. The violence. Tim said it exactly right. Deadpool is defined by its crass and vulgar and violence. Logan is a family drama that has those aspects. Yeah. And up until a few weeks ago, it was my number one. I have no qualms with it not being number one. It's a amazing movie.
So my thing with Logan is, again, I'm an X-Men fan. Again, I like X-Men as the X-Men. This is a great Logan film that features an X-Men character. The only issue I have with it is it's what you guys kind of touched on is rewatchability at times. This movie is really hard for me to watch anymore. Not that it's not great. It's just emotionally draining.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Because the movie does not let up really at all till the end. And then
at the end, this is what it feels like.
And it's the tension is just so much. And then I've always had a problem with rewatching it. I watched it 4 times in theaters, and it was always that part when they're going to Eden and the night over and stuff, it like almost puts me out like sleep-wise because it's so slow and so paced and it's just a little too much. But then again, it ramps back up with that. So I have no problem with Logan being number one. I figured that when I asked you three to be on the list that this would probably be number one. I was surprised that Spider-Verse almost gave it a run, just because of where I knew it ranked for Robert, but I didn't know he already had, Spider-Verse overtook it. So, again, thank you guys for being on, but here is your personal top 10 list. And I don't agree with it very much, but here it is. Yeah, at number 10, Big Hero 6.
Ooh.
Wait.
You got it right? Wow.
Yes, at number 9, Kick-Ass. At number 8, Spider-Man from 2002. Number 7, Kingsman. Number 6, Days of Future Past. Number 5, I maybe messed those up. 7, okay, I do this every time. 7 was Kingsman. 6 was Days of Future Past. 5 was First Class. Deadpool was number 4. Oh, sorry, everybody. Spider-Man 2 was number 3. Spider-Verse was number 2, and Logan is the overall number 1. Is there anything on the list that you don't think should be there? Real quick, real blurbs, real quick.
That's a pretty good list.
Pretty solid list. We all are in pretty general agreement.
I do think that Spider-Verse is a little high, but that's just me personally. It's a great movie. It deserves to be there, but for me, it's a little high.
Yeah, normal episodes where we have a bunch of difference. 2 panelists had the exact same top 10, just in different order. And then
Tim and I had the exact same movies.
Yeah, and Maggie had 2 different. So you guys went 28 for 30. So again, not surprised with what the list. You guys shouldn't really have a problem because only 2 of what you didn't have was on the list. So yeah, again, I thank you guys for all being on the show. Your list doesn't suck as bad as it could have. Deadpool's way too high, so maybe 7. But that's just my opinion. But again, this was Tim, this is Maggie, this is Robert. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.